Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today is episode 2 of the series where I take some of the hardest, most technical, and most complicated manga pages I can find and try to redraw them just to see how difficult they are, how long they take, and I guess how defeated I feel by the end of them. For episode 1, I tackled this page from Takahiko Inoue's Vagabond. That page was filled with trees, rocks, water, an insane amount of tiny natural detail. It took me a long time to finish. It took me around 9 hours. It gave it about a 7 out of 10 for difficulty. For episode 2, I wanted to try something completely different. Instead of drawing nature, today I'm going to be drawing the ridiculous architecture of Tsutomu Nihei's Blame, or Blam, however you want to pronounce it. I recently finished reading the manga, and it has some of the most crazy environments I've ever seen. There are pages where characters are barely visible. They're just these tiny silhouettes, standing inside structures that seem to continue forever. So for today's episode, I chose the spread of Log 12, The Great Surf. You have Kili and Sibo standing on this small platform on the left, surrounded by cables, pipes, bridges, and these massive black structures. The further you look into the page, the less you actually understand what anything is, which is also a pretty accurate description of reading Blam, or Blame. So today, I'm going to try to redraw this page using fine liners and brush pens, talk a bit about Nihei's work, and explain what makes this manga feel so different than anything else I've read. Let's get into episode 2 of trying to draw the hardest manga pages. Before getting into the drawing, I think it's worth talking about Nihei because his background makes the artwork much more interesting. Before becoming a professional manga artist, Nihei worked in construction. He later moved to New York for a period to focus on developing his manga work. That construction experience taught him to think about buildings, interiors, and large structure spaces, which you can clearly see throughout his work. And once you know that, the environments in Blame make a lot more sense. The buildings don't feel like normal manga backgrounds, they feel heavy. Even when I have no idea what a structure is meant to be, it still feels like it's made from concrete, steel, or some machinery. The environment doesn't just sit behind the characters either. A lot of the time, it feels like the city is the main character, and Kili is just a tiny person trying to move through it. The basic story follows Kili as he travels through this enormous megastructure known as the city. The city has grown so chaotic and large that the people living inside it no longer understand what the world outside really is. Kili is searching for someone with the net terminal gene, which could actually allow humanity to reconnect with the net sphere and regain access to the systems controlling the city. He also carries the gravitational beam emitter, which looks like a fairly small handgun but can destroy a ridiculous amount of whatever is standing in front of it. That sounds reasonably straightforward when I explain it like that. There's a main character, he has a mission, and he is searching for something that could potentially help humanity. But the way the story is actually told is completely different. There are very long explanations, Kili barely speaks, and you go through this entire sequences where you're basically just watching him walk through the city. A huge amount of time or distance can pass, and manga doesn't always stop to tell you. You'll turn a page, Kili will be in a different environment, you'll have no idea whether he traveled for 3 hours, 3 months, or 3 years. You gradually piece the world together through small conversations, damaged technology, and different humans, machines, silicon life he encounters. And I'm not gonna lie, there were definitely moments where I didn't fully understand what was happening. I'd finish a chapter and think, okay, I think I understand that. Then 3 chapters later, some new information would appear and I'd realize I probably didn't understand it at all. But I think that confusion is part of what makes the manga work. Kili is traveling through a world that has become too large and too old for anyone to completely understand. And as the reader, you feel the exact same way. You aren't given a massive history lesson before the story begins. You are placed inside the city and are expected to keep moving. That is why I thought this specific page represented the manga so well. There isn't really any action happening, Kili isn't firing his weapon, no one is fighting, there's no dialogue even. It's just 2 people standing inside the city. But the fact that Nihei has made them feel so small tells you everything you need to know about the world. Most manga would make the protagonist the largest and clearest part of the page. Here, you almost completely miss him. And without those 2 figures, it would be so much harder to understand how large the environment is. They give us something human to compare everything with. As always, I started the redraw by creating a grid. For this one, I worked in the landscape. I wanted to keep the wide composition of the original spread. I began by locking in the large shapes. I wasn't worried at all about creating those small cables, hatching or tiny mechanical details yet. I was mainly looking at the platform, the left, the enormous black structure, the center, and the large architectural forms on the right. That central black section was probably the most important area to place correctly because it holds the entire composition together. You have the lighter space around Kili and Sibo on the left, this massive dark shape through the center, and the environment opens up again on the right. So even though there are thousands of tiny lines in this image, it is the large black and white shapes that actually make the page work. Once I had those main areas in place, I refined the sketch a little bit and then started inking. For the final line work, I used a combination of fine liners and brush pens. The fine liners were mainly used for smaller structures, cables, hatching, and all those thin lines moving through the environment. I recently bought a set of Sakura microns which has 0.05, 0.1, 0.3, 0.5, 0.8, and a brush, so I just used that complete set. My approach was actually similar to the Vagabond page. I worked on one area at a time and gradually built in detail before working in all the markers later. But the main difference was that I didn't always understand what I was drawing. With Vagabond, I could look at the reference and say, oh, that's part of a tree, that's a rock, that's the edge of that waterfall area. With this page, I would look at an area and think, what? That's pretty sure that's a wall maybe? Or it could be part machine, or like a bridge attached to another bridge and behind a completely different bridge. I don't know. I generally had no idea what half of it was. So rather than trying to understand the purpose of every object, I just focused on the shapes the lines were creating. I looked at where the shadows connected, which direction the hatching was moving, and how Nihei separated the foreground from the background. The structures closer to us are much darker and have heavier line work. Then as the environment moves away, the lines become thinner, lighter, and less defined. That creates a huge amount of depth that it continues far into the distance. At one point, I realized my version was becoming far too grey. I'd drawn all these separate lines and structures and hadn't committed to massive black areas that gives the original page weight. And once I went in through the center, darkening with a brush pen, the whole image kind of started coming together. The black separated the different layers and made the lighter architectural feel much further away. I also didn't want every shadow to be completely smooth. When you zoom into the original, there are white scratches, rough marks, and broken lines throughout the darker areas. Similarly to what I mentioned in the Vagabond video, detailed artwork doesn't always look perfect, clean when you see it close up. A lot of it is hatching, scribbling, and small gaps of white paper being left between the ink. Then when you move further away, your brain combines all of those marks into a finished environment. So I don't think I'm sitting here perfectly planning every pipe and mechanical structure. A lot of this is me creating a collection of lines that will hopefully look like architecture when you move away from it. The difficult part is making it look chaotic without making it look completely random. Because Nihei's architecture feels messy, there is still a structure underneath it. The perspective, shadows, large shapes are all controlling where your eyes move. If I just covered the page in random lines, it wouldn't create the same effect. It would just look like I covered the page in random lines. Kili and Sibo were definitely the simplest parts of the drawing, but they're also two of the most important. They're basically tiny silhouettes, just with added light. If I made them too large, the city would feel less overwhelming, but if I made them too small and unclear, they'd probably just look like hatching lines of shading. So these two tiny figures are doing most of the work in creating the scale. After Blame, Nihei continued exploring similar worlds through manga including Biomega, Knights of Sidonia. His current series, Tower Dungeon, takes his interest in massive labyrinth-like structures and moves it into dark fantasy. Even when the settings change, you can still see a lot of the same ideas. Characters are living inside these structures that are far larger and older than they properly understand. Humanity is normally trying to survive inside this kind of hostile world, and there is usually this combination of biology and machinery where it becomes difficult to tell where one ends and the other begins. And this is the finished artwork. I'm actually really happy with how it came out. My version is definitely lighter than the original reference. I don't think I had dark enough alcohol markers for this. Especially like through those dark sections in Nihei's work, you can see that it's kind of very close to black. I just don't have anything that can get that close without being just black. The main thing I wanted to capture is still there. Kili and Sibo feel extremely small. The central structure has a lot of weight, and the architecture on the right feels like it's much deeper into the city. If I was going to rate this one out of 10, I'd probably give it a 6. and it took me about 6 hours to finish. Just over 6 hours, I'd say. Compared with the Vagabond page, this was difficult for a completely different reason. The Vagabond page was time consuming because it had so much recognizable natural details. This page was difficult because half the time I didn't completely understand what I was looking at. I was trying to recreate the appearance of architecture without knowing how Nihei imagined all those structures connecting. The fact that he imagined these spaces himself, decided where to place the characters, and then continued doing that across the entire manga page is insane. Drawing this page, it made me appreciate why Blame works so well. The architecture isn't just there to make the pages look impressive, it's telling the overall story. It shows that the city has grown beyond humanity's control. It makes the characters feel isolated and insignificant, and it creates the feeling that there's always something much larger outside the edge of the paper. So yeah, that was episode 2 of trying to redraw some of the most difficult manga pages I can find. Episode 1, Natural Detail of Vagabond. Episode 2, the completely incomprehensible architecture of Blame. For episode 3, I'm not sure. I need some ideas. I have a few ideas, but if you got any ideas of just the craziest, most detailed pages, drop it in the comments and I'll definitely read them, get back to you, and start on the next one. Okay. Thanks everyone so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, please subscribe, and I'll see everyone in the next video. See ya.